Very good morning to you. Welcome live to Portsmouth Harbour. The scene in front of you is what we're bringing to you live on BFBS Forces News on our Facebook and our YouTube streams. The ship you're seeing gradually start to turn around is the flagship of the Royal Navy, HMS Queen Elizabeth. About 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes ago, she pushed away from the jetty, or rather was pulled away from the jetty by the tugs on her left-hand side, and now she's been joined with tugs all around her, and they're beginning the process of turning the ship around. A full 180 degrees. We're seeing her stern at present, and in around 10 minutes' time, she will have gone through that process, and then we'll begin to come towards us where we are, right at the mouth of Portsmouth Harbour, and then head out into the Solent and the blue ocean beyond, the English Channel, and then further still. Good morning to you, wherever you're watching this on the Forces, around the Forces world this morning. It's Tim Cooper here with you live in Portsmouth. We've got a great view of the ship there. Very still day today. Bit of wave noise as the tide reaches its absolute high peak here in Portsmouth, but other than that it's very, very still. Very grey, very autumnal feeling as well. Grey sky, grey ports downhill in the background, grey ship, grey water, just grey. So what do we know about this deployment? Well, for many it's come as something of a surprise, because you may remember, if you watched on Forces News on Friday, HMS Queen Elizabeth returned. She'd been out on deployment for 10 days or so and came back into Portsmouth. Little did we think that she would be leaving in just 3 days' time, but she is. The Ministry of Defence, the Royal Navy, have been on to us and told us that it's a routine training deployment that the ship is embarking on, which will also encompass some defence engagement. And that can mean all sorts of things. It could mean a port visit, it could mean working alongside ships from NATO or other friendly countries. We haven't got that level of detail, but certainly there will be some time spent with some of our allies, whether alongside on land or indeed at sea. And I'm sure we'll find out much more on that as the days and potentially weeks go by. It's not a 6-month deployment by any stretch, as far as I understand it, but I don't have that detail again. I think, my intelligence tells me, if I had any, that it's about 3-4 weeks, give or take. But again, we don't have those details. What we do know is that very soon the harbour will close completely. We've got a White Link catamaran coming in there, the White Rider 2. Spent many a miserable hour on that, many a happy one as well. It's the way to get from Portsmouth Harbour Station to Ryde Pier Head. And once you're at Ryde Pier Head, you jump on well, in my day, you jumped on a 1930s tube train. They've recently upgraded them in the last couple of years. I don't know how I got onto the topic of Ryde trains, but anyway, we'll abandon that there. That's now out of sight, and once again we can see HMS Queen Elizabeth in the distance. They're making very good progress, and probably, as with all things, practice does make perfect, and over the last number of years they've got smoother and smoother at this process. The first few times, I remember one occasion where it took nearly an hour for the ship to be turned, and there were several, variations of it, and she was pushed back to the original 180 degrees. But the more they do this, the slicker it gets, and certainly the last few times I've seen it, it's happened very quickly indeed. And I think from what we're seeing here today, that's going to be the case. Probably the kiss of death on it there, but hopefully so. Everything looks to be going to plan at this stage. So if you're just joining us, it's BFBS Forces News live on YouTube and Facebook as we bring you coverage of HMS Queen Elizabeth leaving Portsmouth Harbour. Now, if you were listening a few moments ago, I talked that the ship had just returned on Friday, and she'd come back from a deployment that began on the 21st of October. And it's been really quite an interesting time for the ship's company during that deployment. So, as I say, she left here on the 21st of October, sailed out, and was joined by RAF 7 Squadron Chinooks. They're based out of RAF Odium in Hampshire, about 25-30 miles directly north of where we are, and that's the home of the Chinook force. And that was a wonderful experience for the ship's company, because they managed to undertake a number of landing and takeoff drills with the Chinook helicopters. Also, and I think this is really interesting, the ship's company who don't work on the flight deck, various logisticians, engineers, what have you, were taken up to the flight deck to witness those flying operations. So they really got to see how that works, and that's a wonderful way, I think, of, you know, bringing coherence and team spirit within the ship's company, so that everyone gets a real understanding of how things work in different spaces. So that's a really interesting use of time whilst they're carrying out this important flying training with 7 Squadron RAF. Also during their trip, they were heading down to the West Country ultimately, but a contingent from Britannia Royal Naval College Dartmouth got to spend some time on board. Again, really useful knowledge gaining for those people there. And I'd say heading down to the West Country, the ultimate destination was off the coast of Plymouth and in those parts for some fleet operational sea training. Now before you type, that's not what FOST stands for. It is now. It used to be Flag Officer Sea Training, but it changed its name a few years back, a couple of years ago, to Fleet Operational Sea Training. Still FOST, but Fleet Operational Sea Training instead of Flag Officer Sea Training. And HMS Queen Elizabeth spent time working with HMS St Albans. Now, St Albans was going through her period of time at FOST. That involves many things. People called FOSTies, who work for FOST, come on board the ship and test the skills and drills of the ship's company, and everything from damage control to dealing with an enemy ship, a pretend enemy ship in this case, of course. And one of the big things during the FOST package is the Thursday War, and HMS Queen Elizabeth was able to work alongside HMS St Albans during that, and she also got to play the hostile, sort of baddie ship, as it were, during part of that training. So that would have been quite a real-sized challenge for HMS St Albans to deal with. And it shows how the ships really do work together and help each other out during their period of time at FOST. Vital as well that time. It really does hone the skills and focus the minds of everybody on board, because they're being taught by some of the very best in the Royal Navy, who have absolutely vast years worth of experience of doing these things and doing them right. So that's what HMS Queen Elizabeth was up to. Came back in here on Friday. I was here, managed to get a few shots of her coming in, which was lovely to see. And as I say, we're suddenly back again on the Monday, and our shot will be obscured for a few moments as another White Link ferry begins its journey. This one is Victoria of Wight, and it's the Isle of Wight's first hybrid ferry. I need to get out more. And there she goes off to the island. I remember spending a trip on Victoria of Wight right at the height of the COVID epidemic, and I was invited to go to the Isle of Wight with my cameraman Lewis Bartley, and we were there to see the Coldstream Guards doing some wonderful work at St Mary's Hospital on the island, getting things ready and really, you know, setting things underway. But for the first time ever, we weren't allowed out of our cars, and we had to sit on the car deck, because normally the rule with a ferry like that is that you have to get out of your cars and go up top for safety reasons. So it's very, very strange doing it the other way round. I do after dinner speaking. If you'd like some of these anecdotes at your major Christmas event, I can bring them to you. Specialism, of course, White Link ferries and tube trains on ride period, seems today. Seems to be a little bit of a pause in the carrier moving at the moment. Don't seem to have seen much of a pause. Let's take a broader look at where we are whilst they're just repositioning those tugs, because the tugs do need to reposition from time to time. Make sure, you know, they're either pulling or pushing in the right place, what have you. So as Victoria of Wight begins her journey to Fishbourne, that's where the car ferries go there. Also car ferries going to Cowes, East Cowes that is, and Yarmouth. So anyway, that's going past Haslam Marina with the Second World War lightship brightening up the view there in green. And then we transit round and we're seeing Fort Blockhouse, which always gives us the background to our little occasions here in Portsmouth as we watch Navy ships depart or arrive home. Fort Blockhouse parts that date back awfully long time, and there are various additions down the years. In the far distance, the old submarine tower. And as we come round again, we get a view of the people here on the round tower, which, as you know, probably if you've ever seen this before, is the historic defensive position, of course, at the harbour mouth, but also the place where, through the centuries, families of sailors have come to either wave them off with a tear in their eye or wave them back, possibly still with a tear in their eye. But there we go, quite a nice smattering of people here today, and some of the people here, their loved ones are going away for their very first time at sea, and that's always good fun, especially the lady here in the red jacket. Give us a wave, go on. Thank you very much. That'll teach you for talking to me earlier on, won't it? But it'll be very exciting very soon, and we'll be able to wave your boyfriend off. Good stuff. Don't look too embarrassed. Well done. There we go. Ship, I think, is beginning to move again, I hope, with any luck. We'll return there in a minute. I would ask Mark to do the whole 360, but that I think might be a bit much. If you are just joining us, it's BFBS Forces News with Tim Cooper with you today. And just, if Mark does a really quick pan zoom round, he will see coming out of the white building a very quick craft coming into our shop, which is one of the police launches, going at some speed there. Blue lights flashing. And the RIB is making its way out of the harbour there to patrol the entrance to make sure everything goes to plan and no ships, small pleasure craft, yachts, sailing dinghies, whatever that are meant to be coming in aren't coming in. We'll take a look round to the right now. The carrier has resumed turning, which is excellent news, but we will just go once more a little bit to the right of our shot. And first of all, we see some of the wonderful historic buildings of old Portsmouth. Some of them are multi-million-pound houses, and what a view some of them have from their roof terraces and balconies and so forth. But as we come round, we'll see more people taking positions and waiting for this spectacle to happen. Now, Portsmouth, along with Plymouth and many other cities historically, really are attuned to the Royal Navy, and even if they haven't got loved ones on board, many people choose to come down just to be a part of this spectacle because it's such a naval city. It's important to everybody. So that's why you'll get a whole range of people, those with loved ones on board and those who just want to come and show their support. So that's where we are, the Round Tower. There's one further along the coast out of our view today that's called the Square Tower. There isn't a triangle tower. That would be a bit too much like the Play School opening credits. But if you are into your military history, coming to Portsmouth seafront area in particular is a wealth of parts of our maritime heritage here for you to come and see it and take a good look at. It's really interesting, and the different things that have been built during different time periods, responding to the threat levels at the time. It's really worth the visit. Then of course you have the historic dockyard, home to the Mary Rose, HMS Victory, HMS Warrior, and a number of other wonderful historic vessels, and that charts the story beautifully of our Royal Navy. But back we are now with HMS Queen Elizabeth. A nice dark grey hue the ship looks today, and she's almost gone through a whole 90-degree turn, so she's almost, not quite there yet, but almost completely side onto us. So her bow will be pointing directly back towards the Princess Royal Jetty, where she was up until 20 minutes ago, berthed alongside. And you can probably see to the right of the shot there HMS Prince of Wales, who we were lucky enough to see come into Portsmouth Harbour, and many of you hopefully watched here on BFBS Forces News last Tuesday. So they're like buses, none for ages, and then loads of them all at once, or loads of movements in and out of the harbour for the two carriers. So yes, approaching that point of 90-degree turn, and then it won't be very long at all now. They're well underway into that turning phase that the bow of the ship will be heading towards us. So once again, it's Tim Cooper with you live from Portsmouth, and wherever you're watching this, thanks very much for tuning in to us today. Hope you're enjoying it, hope you're having a good day, hope your Monday, if it is a Monday where you are, is absolutely fine. And if you're elsewhere around the Forces world, we hope very much you're enjoying this. Yep, turning continuing, good speed. Now the power of these tugs is totally beyond my comprehension. They are just so powerful when you consider the, 65,000 tons of ship that is HMS Queen Elizabeth, and the sheer size of her, over 900 feet long, and yet these very, very small boats have the considerable power and design skill to be able to turn her relatively easily. I say relatively easily because they expend immense amounts of power and energy to do it, and the people that drive the tugs are highly skilled indeed. People are getting in touch with us live on Facebook, which is wonderful to see. Karen is watching, she tells us. Tracy Bailey says safe sailing, son, and all on board the ship. Going for a few weeks away, says Tracy. Thanks very much, Tracy, for getting in touch. And we have a viewer watching us from Zambia this morning. Makupa Bright Mutale has tuned in to Forces News to watch the ship leave. And lovely to have you on board from Zambia. So there we go. The quarter turn, I would say, is well and truly achieved now. And it's slightly obscured by the hot tub, believe it or not, in the grey building on the roof there. But just to the right of that hot tub, you'll see the lead tug, which is SD Tempest, my favourite tug, which I have been on board and seen in operation. Astoundingly powerful. But it hasn't been Tempest for the last few iterations of this, either in or out of Portsmouth Harbour. It's been the Phoenix, which is the stand-in tug, and is a blue tug, two colours of blue, but this is the more traditional white tug, with the less than traditional grey bumper. As I always say, and forgive me, I'll say it again, the grey specifically chosen rubber compound so that it doesn't mark the vessel. And if it does mark the vessel, it's grey, which is the same colour as the vessel, and that's the whole point. So no ugly black marks from the tug there. I'm going to tackle the two elephant in the room points that we always get questioned about on social media feeds. Number one, where are the planes and or helicopters? Well, the planes and or helicopters, if they are part of this deployment, and that detail I don't have, but the routine is very straightforward. They join the ship after she's left Portsmouth Harbour, out of the Solent and out at sea in whatever direction she's going in. So the F-35B Lightning IIs, if they're joining, they will fly in from their base, which is at RAF Marham in East Anglia. As we saw the week or so ago, if Chinooks are coming on board, they'll fly in from their base at RAF Odium. So the people saying, oh, there's no planes on board, no helicopters on board, isn't that a waste, isn't that silly? Well, that's not correct. There wouldn't be at this point in time. There could be, if there needed to be for whatever reason, but the standard operating procedure for this is that there aren't planes on the deck. So that answers that question. The other thing that very much focuses people's minds is reliability issues. And we have seen both carriers have problems with their propeller shafts, different problems we understand, but both have had to abandon what they were doing. HMS Prince of Wales broke down off the south of the Isle of Wight and had to be back into harbour before going up to Rosyth for repair, and HMS Queen Elizabeth had a similar problem earlier this year, but that was dealt with way ahead of what everyone thought time-wise, and here she is back in business once again. So yes, there have been these problems, but they have been dealt with, and touch wood, all appears to be fine now with both carriers. They've both been out doing lots of work. HMS Prince of Wales on a big NATO exercise, leading a carrier strike group, working with the US carrier strike group just recently as well, and doing lots of operations with our NATO partners, including F-35B Lightning IIs, dropping paveway bombs at the Cape Wrath training area, and believe it or not, 19 pilots got their certification for landing on and off the flight deck of HMS Prince of Wales, both at night and daytime during that deployment. So they've been really putting in the sea miles and the time and effort of late, and I'm sure we're going to see that continuing. And during that defence of the carriers, and explanation really more than anything else, the last quarter turn has been completed, and HMS Prince of Wales watches on as HMS Queen Elizabeth is directly facing our way, and will begin to come towards us any minute now. You can just see SD Tempest manoeuvring from the sort of pulling position she's been in to the right of the bow of the carrier, now positioning herself much more straight on, as it were. So just moving back a little bit to get into the absolutely correct position to begin pulling the carrier straight towards us. I'm going to ask Mark now, who's filming these lovely pictures for us today, just to come out nice and wide. And I just want to show you how the harbour is prepared. And if you've ever been down to Portsmouth Harbour, you'll know this is a busy harbour, with all the ferries coming in and out, both the Isle of Wight ones, the ones to France, container ships, cruise ships, merchant vessels, oilers, not to mention all the sailing ships, the pleasure craft, Gosport ferry. And all we have now operating is the very last Gosport ferry for the time being, I suspect, leaving from Gosport directly in the middle of our picture there. And that is probably the last civilian ship movement we'll see for the next 10 minutes or so, because after that the harbour will be well and truly closed, and that's to give free passage to HMS Queen Elizabeth. The ferries are the very last things to stop operating because they are a vital link to the Isle of Wight and Gosport in particular, so they will come across in front of the ship, and then that will be that for a few moments. Now, all around the harbour are vessels that are keeping the area safe. So over at Haslam Marina, parked in front of that, or bobbing around in front of that, is one of those police ribs that we saw a little earlier on. And mariners should check with the King's Harbour Master, or they should be, you know, receiving their daily update as to shipping movements, as a matter of course, one would imagine. But every now and again you get somebody who hasn't checked before they set out, which is a silly thing to do, quite frankly. And you will see a yacht or a pleasure craft try and come out, and that rib standing by to stop it and send it back into its berth for the time being, because the ship needs clear access and a clear run, quite simply because she is so big and the harbour mouth is comparatively small. She needs to be bang on, and you can't get in the way of her, because if you did, there is no room for manoeuvre for the ship, and it would not end well. So that's why all these vessels are here. And other than them now, positioned strategically about, the only thing moving on the harbour is the small flotilla of tugs engaged in the mission of bringing HMS Queen Elizabeth out towards us. Just gone 17 minutes past 1 here in the United Kingdom. The very first bit of movement started at quarter to 1, sorry. So just 32 minutes. That's really good time for that whole mission to take place. Now, as the ship gets closer towards us, the accompanying support and protection boats will manoeuvre slightly ahead of the craft. We've got one of them coming round now. The rib making its way from the Gunwharf Quay area, HMS Vernon as it was back in the day, and out of the harbour. I think they know they've got an audience here. It's a fun job, isn't it, I would think, doing that. So they're all stationed out there. The other rib, the other side, is gone. The one we were looking at a few moments ago that was outside Haslam Marina, that's making its way out to station itself again in the harbour. So all is set. Now, I'm often asked by people, why no Procedure Alpha, as it's called? That's the thing we're all very familiar with, where the sailors line the deck, and it's particularly spectacular on an aircraft carrier with such a large deck as this, 4 acres. So having the ship's company, hundreds of them, lining that looks really, really cool. And quite often literally is really, really cool if they're coming back in winter. But that only happens when they're either returning or coming back from a big deployment, or leaving to go on a big deployment potentially. But it doesn't happen on this sort of routine, couple of weeks here, month there sort of thing. This is routine business, and I think that's good actually, because it does mean when the ship, whichever ship it is, comes home from a really long time away, 6 months away at sea, even 9 months away at sea, to make it really special and line the deck is such a lovely thing, and a proud part of naval tradition and heritage, which I'm sure the sailors massively enjoy. One of my favourite homecomings was down in Plymouth once. And I was lucky enough to join the ship out by the breakwater and sail in on the ship past Drake's Island and past Devil's Point, which is a sort of equivalent in Plymouth of the Round Tower. It's where a lot of families gather, a very narrow part of the Tamar estuary there, to watch the ship come in. And being on deck with everybody at Procedure Alpha in their finery, was a really nice thing to be a part of. But none of that today. Instead, the focus really is the ship. And the ship is really a projection of the Royal Navy's ability and power. We were talking earlier about the big exercise HMS Prince of Wales was involved with recently, and they had American admirals on board watching the capabilities. The F-35B Lightning IIs were flying alongside American planes. Our NATO allies, countries like Norway, Denmark involved as well. And you have a floating platform that can be, you know, versatile in its approach to what it can bring to any operation, from you know, hosting planes to do over the horizon bombing missions to helicopters, the whole gambit of things there. And we know the sort of planes that the carrier's designed for, the F-35B Lightning IIs, but she can host a whole raft of different sorts of airframes, even up to things like Osprey, and even have down in the hangar Chinook with their propellers removed. So really, really versatile, and a sort of Swiss Army knife of carriers there, really able to do what is needed at any moment in time. So for all of you watching on BFBS Forces News, we're reaching the moment where the carrier will be within a few moments right alongside us, and then within a few seconds she'll be gone and out into the harbour mouth. So let's just take in these pictures as once again HMS Queen Elizabeth leaves Portsmouth Harbour. This always reminds me of a very stately, almost procession, the way this happens, with the tugs perfectly positioned, just as you would have at a state ceremonial event, for example, with troops marching or something. It's very, very grand feeling occasion, I find this, and very serene, yet impressive. It's a very, very special moment. And you're not going to see this at any other port anytime soon. Portsmouth is the home of the carrier, and specially fitted out to do so, with years worth of dredging operations and a massive, massive build in the dockyard, getting the Princess Royal Jetty ready for the carriers. Huge work, really making Portsmouth ready for the next 50 years. As ever, a few of the ship's company are able to find a vantage point, whether they're on duty there, manning weapon systems, or lucky enough to be monitoring operations from the bridge wing, as a few people are today, or just poking a hand out of a hatch or doorway to wave. Lovely scenes there. A sea of waving arms, and a couple of the ship's company there waving back. There's normally a couple lurking at the stern as well, in the very small. We're hemmed in by people, but that's all the more to the good. And if you go up, Mark, if you can, to the second island there, you'll see the... No, you can't. It's head's in the way, but there's a lot of waving arms there through the wonderful tinted glass where they maintain the flying operations. So there we have it once again, HMS Queen Elizabeth on her way. The flagship of the Royal Navy, leaving Portsmouth for routine training and also some defence engagement. We're not talking months, we're talking perhaps weeks. And I'm sure many more people will be here to welcome the ship home in those few weeks once they're concluded and the ship will return home. And don't forget, that will be December. We're getting very close to that Christmas time when everyone really does want to be at home. So lots of people here today to see her off, and we hope there have been lots of people watching as well right around the UK and the world. And I think it's time for us now to say goodbye as HMS Queen Elizabeth heads into the Solent and beyond. From Mark Hearn filming, from all these people here today, and from me, Tim Cooper, talking, thank you very much indeed for watching. And for plenty more military news, views and opinions, go to forcesnews.com or follow us right across social media. For now though, good afternoon.